Well, good morning. Thank you for letting me share with you this morning. I need to let you know right off the top, I have not spent any hard time in prison, but I have spent a little bit of time. That died real quick. Right? I was in kindergarten, and we went to a birthday party. Back in the day, you could go to City Hall and see the fire department and police department. So we went there, and we went for this birthday party, 5 years old. One of my friends was having it, 6 or 7 of us there, and we got to go climb on the fire truck. We got to get the little red hat that falls apart 7 minutes after they give it to you, and we got to play with the sirens in the police car, look in the ambulance, and then they took us to the jail. And so we're with the police officer, full uniform, and he lets us go inside the cell. And then he closes the door. And one of the kids in our group just starts crying. Like, he does not want to be in there, locked in jail. And it seemed like hours. It was about 20 seconds probably. But as soon as they opened the door, I was done crying. I was completely over it, right? But I realized in that moment, right, two things. Number one, I do not want to go to prison. And number two, even at 5 years old, freedom is something I really, really want. I do not want to be restrained or held back or put in some place I can't get out of. And we long for that in our lives. We long for that as a country, but we also long for it in our personal lives. That I look at my life and I look at what I want in life and I long for freedom. And I have this built-in, this innate just desire for freedom, for something more in life. Of course, we know this concept of freedom. I don't want someone to tell me what I can think, say, or do. I don't want to be restrained in that. I want to have the right or power or ability to think, say, or do what I want. And there's that side of aspect. But there's the overall view of not being imprisoned or enslaved. And we long for that. And we look to a lot of different things in our lives to provide that freedom. Or if I could just get that next promotion, then I'd feel more free. I get that boss off my back who's just been riding my case. If I can not be working for them, then I'll feel more free. If I could get that next bump in pay, if I could get that raise, if I could have a little bit more money, then I'd feel more financially free, not as restrained. If I could have this relationship, I'd feel like I'm in a better place in life. If I could get a good 5 or 10 year plan or so, that would really help me feel like I have more control of my life. And that really is what it comes down to. I want to be the master of my own destiny. I want to control my own life. And we long for that, and we work at it, and we strive for it, and we build a life. But the problem is, we don't really ever feel more free. We get that by promotion, and there's another boss. We get a little bit more money, and another bill pops up. And we put these things in our lives, hoping they'll make us feel more free, but we never seem to really get there. We never arrive at that freedom, and we never get that satisfaction that we're longing for. But here's the thing is, we have a good God. We have a good God who says, that desire that's in you, I put that there. And he says, I'm not just going to leave you there to try to figure it out. He tells us in Galatians chapter 5, verse 1, he says, for freedom Christ has set us free. Stand firm, therefore, and do not submit again to a yoke of slavery. Freedom is what he wants for you and I. Jesus wants freedom for you in your life. He wants freedom for me in my life. He wants freedom for everyone that's ever walked the face of this earth. He's saying, don't submit to a yoke of slavery. Don't settle for imprisonment. Freedom is what he made you for. And while that sounds good, it's kind of one of those yeah, that's great, but how do I get that? Well, again, he's a good God who doesn't just leave you to wonder, how do I get there? He lays it out. He lays out a formula or a blueprint for how to follow him. In John 8, verses 31 and 32, he lays out very clearly. It says, so Jesus said to the Jews who had believed him, if you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Right? So this formula of, if you abide in my word, you're truly my disciples, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Okay, so do I spend time in God's word? What amount of time do I have to read God's word to kind of get to that point? What amount of time do I have to do? Is it 6 weeks, 6 years? Is it 30 minutes a day? What is that? But it's bigger than that. John 1:14 says, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen his glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. Jesus is the Word of God. John 1:1, we see that. And so when he says, if you abide in my word, he's saying, if you abide in me, if you abide in Jesus, that's the key to it there, right? You will know the truth. John 14:6, Jesus says, I am the way and the truth and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. So all of a sudden we have this clear picture of if you abide in Jesus, you will know the truth, Jesus, and the truth, Jesus, will set you free. It's a very clear picture that my freedom, your freedom, is found in Jesus. Not in the life I build for myself, not in what I set up in my life to maybe get me to a point where I feel more free, but freedom itself is found only in Jesus. Which begs the question, right? What if the way to actually be free goes against everything we thought leads to freedom? Would that change anything in my life? Would that change the way that I view the way I live my life? Would that change what I run after in life? And here's the sad truth. Here's what we need to really get and understand is what we really need to be freed from is everything that we look to for freedom. We'll see that in just a second. But we long for freedom and we look for it in so many ways that don't satisfy us. And Jesus says this is the way to freedom. This is the way to get that. But just like when I did my small 20 seconds in jail, I got an invitation to that party. And to the freedom Jesus is offering us, to the freedom that he lays out, this is how you get it, he gives us an invitation. Matthew chapter 4, we're going to spend most of our time today. In verse 18, we see the start of Jesus' ministry here on earth. 3 to 3.5 years of him setting up his kingdom, what his priorities are, building his church that will one day, after he goes to the cross to pay for the sins of the world, dies, rises again, and ascends back into heaven, leaving his church to carry on his purpose and mission on the earth. What he's setting up starts as he is about to call these 3 or 4 guys that we see here. And he gives them an invitation. He gives them the same invitation that he gives you and I. He says, I want you to have freedom. And this is how you get it. Matthew chapter 4, verse 18 says this. While walking by the Sea of Galilee, he saw 2 brothers, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. And immediately they left their nets and followed him. And going on from there, he saw 2 other brothers, James the son of Zebedee and John his brother, in the boat with Zebedee their father, mending their nets, and he called them. And immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. That's a crazy picture. One, Jesus is walking along the sea, walking along the beach, and he walks up to these guys who have been working all night. Fishing's hard work. It's not like what I do with my boys every now and then where you have and you flick a little rod in, and watch a bobber, and wait, and sit, and then you go home when you're hungry, right? This is hard work over and over again, casting nets and pulling them out night after night. It's hard work, and they're at the end of their night. They're finishing up. It's morning, and Jesus walks up to them, and he invites them in the middle of their life that's going on. He says, follow me. All right, so we have to put it all together that Jesus says, I want freedom for you. This is how you get it. Right? Abide in Jesus, know Jesus, and Jesus will set you free. And then the invitation is, follow me. Now, we live in a culture and a world that says followers are weak, followers can't think for themselves, followers aren't actually free. They're always being told what to do by someone else. Right? We have a culture that idolizes and values leadership well over following. If you don't believe me, Amazon has 57,000 books on leadership. 57,000. There is no following section. Barnes & Noble, you walk in, front and center, leadership, bestsellers, they're all there. Not a following section there. Google, right? If you Google, and I did this, don't do this right now, but you can test it if you want to later, right? You can Google books on following. And I'm sure you've never made a mistake on Google and spelled something wrong, but they give you you typed this. Did you mean this instead? Right? I typed in books on following, and it said, you searched for books on following. Did you mean books on leadership? No joke, right? That is what our society says, that following is not the way you get free, right? Following is not the way you build a life for yourself. Leadership is. That's how you need to do it. You build your life. You build what you need to. You look to your career. You look to your finances, and you take care of these things for yourself. But Jesus says, Freedom is only found in following me. It's a huge shift in our minds. Freedom is only found in following him, which then the question has to come, if freedom is only found in following him, how do I do that? That has to be the greatest question of my life. If I know that the freedom I long for is found only in him, I have to ask, how do I do that? Because freedom isn't found in more control of our lives, but in giving total control of our lives to Christ. And so Jesus has called these guys. He walks up to Peter and Andrew, and he says, follow me. And it says that they immediately left their nets and followed him. Now, if you are not a 80-30 or so, 80-0 commercial fisherman, you may not have an understanding of why it's a big deal, right? But these guys, they have their nets, they have their boat. That's what makes them fishermen. Right? In fact, even here, it says when Jesus walked up to them, they were doing this because they were fishermen. That's who they were. That was their identity. But they are faced with the question, when Jesus says, come follow me, of they're holding their nets. Jesus says, come follow me, and they have a choice to make. Do I follow him, or do I stay doing what I'm doing? Do I keep hanging on to what gives me my source of income? Do I keep holding on to my career and what gives me my status in life? What it provides for my family? What gives me my significance in my community? Do I hold on to those things? And they said no. They immediately left them and followed Jesus. And so the question you and I need to answer is, what are the nets in our lives? Is it my career? Is it that job that I've worked at year after year, working my way up in the company? Is it my financial security? That I said, man, I've built this life. I've scrimped and saved. I've done what I need to make sure that I take care of myself in this. Is it a relationship? Is it something that you have built in your life that you say, this is what I want out of life? It's my goals. It's my dream. It's my 5, 10, 15, 20-year plan that I sat down and I wrote out, and this is what I'm going to follow. Is that what we're holding on to? Because the invitation that he gives them comes to you and I as well. And it comes to us just like it did to them in the middle of our life, in the middle of everything that is going on, and we're sitting there with the life we've built, holding on to it, and we have to answer the question, will I follow him or not? Will I let go and follow him? It's hard because we like the life we've built. It's not necessarily bad things, but these guys drop their nets, they leave their boats, and they follow Jesus. And that's going to be great for that first day. They're feeling good. Man, they're pumped up. There was something about Jesus that made them say, man, I want to follow him. Most people, I hope you, if you're on the beach and someone walks up to you and just says, come follow me, you don't just abandon your family and go follow them. That would be a strange thing. But there was something about Jesus that they said, we're going to follow this guy. And they're feeling great. But day 2, day 3, I wonder if they had the questions of, are we ever going back? Is this just a couple days? He's going to do a seminar or something, then I'm going to come back. Is this a 1-week-long mission trip? Then I'm going to come back and show the pictures I took. And am I ever going to fish again? How am I paying for stuff? Where am I going to sleep? What about my family? These are real human beings that I'm sure had real questions that you and I would have too. But we have a good God who knows the questions we ask. He knows our hearts. He knows the things that we're wondering about, and he gives us exactly what we need. And so we see in chapter 5 here at the very start, after they have been following for just a little bit, he says, guys, come here, I need to talk to you. It's the Sermon on the Mount. Is surrounded by a large group of people, but he pulls his disciples aside and he says, guys, let's talk about this. I need you to understand what my kingdom is going to be about. I need you to understand what I'm building. I need you to understand what following me will really look like, because you've said yes to follow me, and that's awesome. And now you need to know what you got yourself into. Now you need to know what I am laying out as how you can get the freedom that you long for inside of yourself. And he talks, and he sits with them, and he shares. The following comes down to these 2 things. 2 things. And he starts in verse 2. He says, and he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. And if you're like me, you're thinking, okay, this is not exactly the list I was looking for. I was looking for hey, this is 15 to 20 hours a week. Here's the dental benefits. Here's what is going to come with that, right? You're looking for a little bit more detail in that. And Jesus is laying out these three things. If you notice, these are all three things about emptying yourself, about getting rid of yourself. Blessed are those who are poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the meek. The first thing you and I have to do if we're going to follow Jesus, one, freedom is only found in following him. And if we're going to follow him, we have to empty ourselves. That's where it starts. The poor in spirit. It's another word for being humble. Blessed are the humble, for they shall inherit the kingdom. In our world, in our minds, we don't think humble people are the ones that win. We think it's those that go and get what they want. He says the humble will inherit the earth, the poor in spirit. So what does it mean, right? So I humble myself. What does that actually mean? It means that I don't have a prideful view of myself, that I don't look at the life that I've built and say, man, I've done pretty well. I don't look at everything I've done to free myself, everything I have done to take care of myself, everything I've done to satisfy the need and the longing within me. I don't look at that and say, man, I've arrived, I've done great. I look at that and I say, I didn't do great because I'm still longing. But more than that, I humble myself to have a right view of who I am. And I see myself for the sin that I have in my life. I see myself for just the way that God sees me. And God sees me raw and real in just everything that I am, the stuff that I don't want anybody else to know. I am seen by God with that. I am humble. I've emptied myself of my pride and my ego. And then he moves to, blessed are those who mourn. It's like, okay, that one's even worse, right? We don't associate mourning with winning. Like, you don't see someone with a World Series trophy that's just like, I'm so sad that this happened. Like, you don't mourn that. There's tears of joy, yes, but mourning is something that happens with loss, right? You lose a loved one too soon. You have a relationship that's broken. You have a job you poured yourself into year after year after year that one day they call or send you an email and just say, we don't need you anymore. We mourn loss in life. And so if I humble myself, okay, that leads to a right view of myself, then that also leads to mourning of sin in my life. And I am broken over the sin in my life. And so we move from, okay, I am humble, I'm broken over my sin, and I mourn that. And then we move to meekness. Meekness is a word we may not be real familiar with. Timid or weak is kind of what comes to mind, but in reality, it's the exact opposite. It's strength controlled. We live in a world where we have world leaders, dictators, presidents, kings, that all flex their muscles and show their power, and they will fight over getting money or land or whatnot. And we see this, that strength wins, that you shock and awe, you blow the other guy out of the water. And Jesus says, that's cute, right? He said, the meek shall inherit the earth. While kings and kingdoms are warring over small pieces of land, Jesus says, the entire earth, all of creation will be inherited by those who are meek. Strength under control, also submission. So the picture that he's painting here is you humble yourself, you're broken over your sin, and you submit to him. That's where following starts, in emptying yourself of your thoughts, your goals for your life. Because that's what it really comes down to for you and I, right? How this plays out in our lives is not like, hey, I'm going to quit fishing. Done. Right? No, it's my plans, the life that I have built, my goals, my dreams, my purposes for my life, I set them aside. And I'm willing to put them down. Because I know, right, that I cannot follow Jesus and hold on to the life that I want. Peter and Andrew knew this. These guys were not like philosophers. They weren't like college, like graduates. They were fishermen, but they grasped the concept of Jesus says, follow me. And I cannot hang on to the life that I have, an identity that I have, and do both. Because they could have just said, all right, I'll throw my nets on my shoulder. Peter, being stubborn like he is, grab the boat and drag it along the shore just as they follow like Jesus. No, they don't do that. They just stop and they say, this part of me has to be gone. This life that I have now goes away if I follow him. I cannot follow Jesus and cling to the life that I've built. And I will never know freedom if I can't let go of that. That's where it hurts. Right? Because we like the life we've built. We feel good about it. those things we've worked for. But that longing within you will not be satisfied until you're willing to let them go. That desire you have for more in life will not be filled until you're willing to let it go. And all of a sudden, we can kind of see how what we need to be freed from is actually what we turn to for freedom, because the life we built for ourselves, right, the better the life we think we've built for ourselves, the harder it is to put down. And the more difficult it is for me to say, Jesus, I am leaving this to follow you. And we become enslaved and imprisoned by the lives we've built for ourselves. I can't leave this like career. I've been there 20 years. I can't give up on this plan. I'm almost there. I've really made a comfortable life for myself. And all of a sudden, we're faced with a choice of, I really like what I have. And it's harder to follow him. We become enslaved by a life that we've built for ourselves that will not free us. We can be more comfortable. We can even maybe knock out a wall in our prison, get a bigger cell. But in the reality is we're still imprisoned. We still have a longing for freedom that's not being fulfilled. But here's the thing is you have these disciples are feeling good. They're like, yeah, leave everything, empty myself. I left my nets, my boat, right? But we're not empty just for the sake of being empty. Right? It's not a contest of who is the most empty in their life. That'd be really sad. Like, I have the least amount going on in my life. I have nothing, right? It's not something that we're going to brag about. Or if that was the case, like Peter and Andrew, like, hey, we left our nets, we left our boat. Like, someone probably has our boat now. We don't have a business anymore. Like, we don't have anything to support ourselves. And then you have James and John are like, you left stuff. We left our father sitting in a boat and just walked away and didn't say anything. He may be still in the boat, right? There's some funny things in God's word. Like, what was that guy even like thinking? Like, my kids just left me. What am I going to do? But it's not, hey, who can be the most empty? We are emptied to be filled. We are emptied of the things we've built in life that we think are good so that we can be filled with the better, great things of God. Because to follow him, we have to empty ourselves, but we empty ourselves to be filled by Christ. That's what he continues on in verse 6 of Matthew 5 here. He says, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. So we have this huge switch from empty yourself to like long for, hunger, thirst, crave, want this. Because the life we've built, we've longed for, we've craved, and we've built it. But he's saying that was all not what's going to free you. So you get rid of that. And once you're emptied, you have that focus of like, if you've ever been hungry, like I'm talking like your stomach is like just like gurgling, your mouth is just like cotton mouth. You are just, I am more hungry than I've ever been, and I'm focused completely on that, and I will handle that. He's saying that's what you need. That's the drive. That's that like desire that you need. Hunger and thirst for righteousness. Not hunger and thirst for comfort in life, not hunger and thirst for the kingdom you could build yourself, not hunger and thirst to move up on the ladder in life, but hunger and thirst for righteousness, hunger and thirst to be Christ-like, hunger and thirst for right standing with God. And it changes the way that I view everything in life. That I desire Christ-likeness. I hunger, I thirst, I crave. Right, that goes back to that John 8 where he says, abide in the word. If I'm going to abide, it means I am going to immerse. I'm going to sink into it. I am going to just pour myself. I'm going to hunger and thirst and crave. And if I do that, I'm going to know Jesus. And if I know Jesus, I find freedom. That's the process that he's laying out here. Hunger and thirst for righteousness, and you will be satisfied. Guaranteed satisfaction. That longing you have that hasn't been filled by everything else you built into your life, he says it's found here. You will be satisfied. Hunger and thirst for this. Long for it. And he says, blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. It's this picture of as I hunger and thirst for this, as my life becomes about Christ, as my life becomes overwhelmed with him and who he is, and doing everything he calls me to, I cannot help but let that bleed out into the rest of my life. Because I have received the mercy of God. I was an enemy of God. I have been made right with him. He has shown me mercy and taken my sin on himself and given me his righteousness. And I can't help but want others to know that. So I show mercy in every aspect of my life and every just love relationship that I have. I bring mercy into it because I want them to know the mercy I have with Jesus. I want them to experience that one day of the mercy that God has shown them. And it pours out. As I hunger and thirst for righteousness, it pours out into every aspect of my life. Why? Because blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. We had talked about, we don't get to bring this stuff with us. We have our whole life, and we can't do that and follow Jesus. Why? Because we have to be pure in heart, single-minded, like devotion to the purpose that he has created us for. And as we hunger and thirst for righteousness, we will discover that we exist for the glory of God. That my purpose on this earth, that your purpose on this earth is to glorify God in everything you do. Jesus came to die on the cross, to rise from the dead, paying for our sins for the purpose of glorifying God. And so now I have this single-minded focus on I will glorify God in my life. And then we see in the next verse, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Right? And it's that same thing, that I have been made at peace with God. I've been reconciled to God. I have peace with God that I never thought was possible, but I have that. And I want to bring that to every aspect of my life. I want you to know that. I want everyone around me to know that. I want my greatest enemy to know that. I want to be at peace with them because I want them to one day be at peace with God. And we have this picture of you have a life that was lived for yourself. You have a life that was lived for building your little kingdom that made you comfortable, that made you feel good, that gave you a little bit of just room to breathe in terms of I didn't have a boss that was on my neck. I could spend what I wanted to spend, and I felt good and comfortable. But Jesus says, the life I have for you, freedom is found in emptying yourself and having a life that is hungering and thirsting to live a life that honors me. And it bleeds out into every part of your life. And you can't help but let it overtake every aspect of your life. And that's why you can't just show up on a Sunday morning and say, I'm going to give 2 or 3 hours and do that, and then I'll go back to my little life, build my kingdom. It has to cover everything. Jesus saying, follow me is going to be everything that your life was ever meant to be about. Glorifying God. So what does that look like in my life? I'm a new creation, right? The old is gone, the new has come. It is no longer I who live, but Christ in me. I am no longer the master of my own domain. I am no longer the one who calls the shots in my life. So I can approach everything in my life as, I don't need this. That I don't have to be enslaved to that because I am following Christ. And I've left it all to follow him. And the goal and purpose of my life is now to glorify God. My career, my family, my hobbies, they all exist to glorify God. Everything I have in life, everything I do in life is no longer there for me to create enjoyment and comfort for myself, but it's there to glorify God. Jesus sums it up in Matthew chapter 16, verse 24. A little bit later on here, he says, then Jesus told his disciples, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. One of the hardest things that Jesus ever said, or deny yourself, empty yourself, take up your cross, be filled with Christ, take on the purpose of God, and follow him. It is going to cost me everything. But it's worth it. Because what I get is that thing I could never get on my own. What I get is all of Jesus. What I get is the purpose for my life that he created me for. That's what it takes to follow. That's what leads to freedom. Empty myself, be filled with Christ. Later on in Matthew 19, Jesus paints a picture of what it looks like to not follow him, of what it looks like to hang on to your nets, of what it looks like to be faced with that invitation and say, no, I'm good. I'm going to stick with what I have. It's one of the saddest points in the Bible. There's a man who's known as a rich young ruler. So according to our culture and our world, he has it all. He's rich, he's got money. He's young, he's got his health. He's a ruler, he has power. He is everything that the Barnes & Noble leadership section says you should do. He may have wrote some of those books. But he's longing for something. He says, there's something I still lack. And so he goes to Jesus. He's even heading in the right direction. And he goes to Jesus, and Jesus says, hey, all right, let's walk through this. And he walks him through these 10 commandments. And the guy says, man, I've kept them all, which is amazing in and of itself, right? That this guy thinks he's done it all. So you have a guy who's rich and young and powerful, and he's super well-versed in the religious rules, and he does them well. This is where we need to realize that as we walk through this, that this is probably the guy that we identify with the most in this story. We really want to be Peter. We really want to be like the disciples, but this guy could very easily, instead of being called rich young ruler, be called American church person. We got a lot in life. We know the religious rules. But I wonder if you still are longing for something. And Jesus says to him, hey, you are longing for something? Okay, this is what you need to do. Go sell everything you have, give it to the poor, and then follow me. Empty yourself, be filled with me, and follow me. Same invitation that you get and I get. And what happens is, it says that the man went away very sad because he had much wealth. See, he had really big nets. He had filled his life. He had built the dream life that most people would want. He had homes, he had money, he had influence, he had power, he had everything that our world tells us we should value in life. And when he was given the invitation to freedom, he said, I like my life too much. But notice that he didn't go away, okay, he went about his life and he was good. He says he went away sad. He says he went away sad because he had much wealth. Because he knew he wasn't free. And he knew where freedom was found. And he knew that he had chosen wrongly. But he had made himself way too comfortable. He had built himself too comfortable and too big of a prison that he could feel like he was doing great in life, but he was never free. We don't want to be that. But when Jesus says, this is how you follow me, know that it's worth it. Know that whatever you're going to leave is worth leaving to gain him. Whatever you're going to leave is worth gaining to follow him. So what does that look like in your life and my life? That's the big question, right? What is the application for you and I in this? Do not, today at lunch, go to your family and say, hey, you're out, right? You are my nets, and I'm leaving you here at Pasta House, right? Don't do that. Don't be handing out your credit cards on the street. Don't walk in Monday and Tuesday and tell your boss what you really think of him, right? It's bigger than that. Right? It's bigger than that. It is looking at your life not as this is what will build my kingdom. Now, it is saying everything in my life exists as an opportunity to glorify God. So when I am at work and I am faced with a decision to maybe cut some corners, to maybe do something that's a little bit not as ethical as it could be, that will benefit my company, that will benefit my status in this company, that will make me rise in that ladder and lifestyle that I want to have, it is not even a choice because my life does not exist for myself. My life doesn't exist to make me comfortable. My life exists to glorify God. So that decision is made for me. I will do what glorifies God in that. If it's my finances, if I have $7 billion, that $7 billion exists to glorify God. Not to make me comfortable, not to make my life better, not to do anything for myself. It exists to glorify God. If I invested in Bitcoin and now have $0, anything I have exists to glorify God. If I am rich, if I am poor. Because if I approach that job as I exist to glorify God in this, and my boss says, I don't think you need to exist in this job anymore, I'm okay with that. Because I've already let it go. And I know that the decision I have here is not, do I preserve myself in this job? The decision is, do I glorify God? So I move to the next job. If I'm shoveling elephant poop at the circus, I will glorify God in that. Anything in my life is an opportunity to glorify God. As someone who's emptied themselves and says, I am filled with Christ. I am hungry and thirsting for righteousness. My life will be about him and glorifying him, and that is it. Everything that I do points to him, glorifies him. God has a meaningful life of freedom for you, but you have to let go of your life to get it. But an empty life is not the goal. Be filled. So today, where are you at? A couple things for us to think about. Are you longing for freedom? I think we all have it. Are you longing for it? It's found only in Jesus. Do you struggle with emptying yourself? That's where I think a lot of us are at. As the American church, that's the big elephant in the room for us. We have a really good life we've built. Do I struggle with letting that go? Matthew 16:26, a couple verses after, he says, if anyone come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. He says, for what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul? Maybe you just need to spend some time with God here in just a second when we sing. And you get on your knees and say, Jesus, I am laying down my career, my finances, my relationships, everything that I look to for security, everything I look to make me feel better in life, everything I look to, I'm laying them down. And I don't know what you're going to do with it, but I'm willing to lose it because I want to hunger and thirst for you. And maybe you have emptied yourself and you've worked so hard at being empty and like, hey, I'm going to get myself out of here. But have you ever filled yourself with Jesus? Have you ever just hungered and thirsted for him? Have you ever been to that point of I'm going to abide in him and immerse myself in him and long for him? Maybe you just need to take some time and commit, Jesus, I need you. I don't need to just get rid of myself. I want to be filled with you. I want you in my life. I want you to pour out into every aspect of my life. God, I want you in everything I do. The goals and priorities of my life, God, I want to be yours. Whatever you need to do, do it. But stop settling for a comfortable prison when he offers freedom. It's the biggest waste of your life. Do not be like the rich young ruler who went away sad because he had much wealth. Be willing to lose it all for him. Let's pray.